Hallo und herzlich willkommen zur Industry.forward EXPO. Ich bin Dana Neitzke vom Publish-Industrie Verlag und ich bin Ihre Moderatorin für diese Session Ohne Backup-Schutz in die Krise. Europas Industrie droht der Kollaps. Da bin ich natürlich nicht alleine. Bei mir begrüßen darf ich heute Ossi Talvitier, Chairman of the Board bei Nuix Node. Hello Ossi, it's nice of you to be here today.
It's nice to be here. My name is Ossi Talvitie. I have been working in the field of industrial automation for the last 20 years. And out of that last 6-7 years, I've been working as a software entrepreneur. I was thinking to start this presentation by asking the audience and myself a little bit that whether the world of industrial automation that I have spent all my life into could be seen as a field of industry that is more progressive one or more like conservative one. And I think that we all kind of agree that we are definitely more on the conservative side. And if we think that 20 years that I have been working in this industry, what has happened in around us, we have things that didn't exist basically 20 years ago, like social media, smartphones, iPads, streaming services like Uber and Airbnb that has significantly changed or even created new fields of business, meaning that many of those business fields are not even the same that they used to be 20 years ago. However, industrial automation in many places or in many cases are working exactly the same way as they were when I started my working career back in 2004, 2005. So it's relatively fair to say that we are not those fast movers. And that is why it's quite interesting that we are at the moment in the verge where there are certain megatrends that are actually shaping our industry probably more than at any time in the last 20 years. And some of these megatrends are shaping the industry to be more progress or more progressive. So they are like driving the progress within the industry, making things, new things coming faster. And I think that if we look at the biggest one of them, it's data. Now, we have been talking about data collection, usage of the production data in various reasons for the last at least a decade. But honestly speaking, only in the last couple of years, I have in my work seen a real usage, real benefits done with the data, mostly by big companies and end users. Still, industrial machine builders are way behind on this development as well. Now, why is this speeding up? My opinion is that it's mainly because machine learning and AI technologies have become like a consumer product. So people know what they can do. People understand the value of it and the power of this technology. Which also means that platforms, tools, and people mastering these technologies have become significantly valuable resources. Now, this is very cool stuff. This is stuff that is making things interesting, that are making things moving forward. Interesting point of view is that what is the legislator doing? What is the governmental bodies doing regarding these trends? They are making laws and legislation that is basically slowing down this rather than speeding up because they are worried that we are moving too fast. Let's hold that thought for a second and go to other kind of megatrends. They are more those that are driving rather concern than progress. We have war in Europe. We have clearly hostility between the big countries. We have hostility between countries overall, and even within the countries. We have threats of democracy rising and a lot of these things. So we actually, for the first time, at least in my working career, have started to talk about things that we have to be resilient against threats from another country or from other continents, including resilience against physical threats as well as cyber threats and environmental threats. Going back to the legislators, what are they doing within these trends? They are making new laws like NIS2, CRA, ESG reporting, and so on and so on. They are speeding us up. That means that we as industry, we are not doing enough here. So we are taking the cool stuff and we are moving too fast, and we are not keeping this side at the same pace, so the legislator is pushing us to do more. While we should understand ourselves that we cannot compromise on either side. And this is why today, because out of the fact that I only have 20 minutes, I needed to focus on something. I was thinking to focus more on the second part of it, how this will look in the industry in the near future. And to be able to answer to that question, I would like to ask another question, which is that where do we look for references? Where do we look for hints? And I think that it's relatively obvious that the answer is IT industry. IT industry have changed so massively in the last 2 decades that they have basically already built all these blocks. They are already living this reality every day. And they have done it, by the way, without the push from the legislation. Rather, they have been constantly slowing down by the legislators rather than speed up. And they have been able yet still adopt all the AI technologies, data collection technologies, and utilizing these. We know as a fact that the majority of the data within the systems like Snowflake, Databricks, and other large machine learning infrastructures are coming from different kind of IT systems. We are only starting to put their industrial data. But it's not only that what they have done. They have also done the other side. If you go to any company that has an IT department, even my own company, we have full control of all the devices that we are having in our IT network. We know exactly what hardware is it, what software it is, what versions of different operating systems there are, if there are certain updates needed, if the updates have been done, who are the users who have access where. That control is obvious in the IT world, that it's there and it's fully in control by the companies. But it's more than that. It's also that whenever we are in the IT world and we are developing any kind of software, we have full version control of them, and we have exact information who have done what, when, where is the change of the code, so we can roll things back. Personally, I had an experience of this thing not too long ago. A couple of months ago, one of my products was down when we get to the office in the morning due to some bad patch in the update. We basically didn't have our product up and running at all, and it looked like everything had crashed. We didn't know the reason. 45 minutes later, we were 100% back on action. Because we had the mechanisms to roll it back, we had the mechanisms to recovery, and we had the mechanisms to understand very quickly where is the problem and what has caused it. Now, very big question to all of us working in the industrial automation world is that do we actually have these capabilities in industrial factories? Do we know what we have? What PLC brands? What versions? Operating systems? Vulnerabilities of these devices? Have we done the updates? Who have done them? How? So on and so on and so on. I'm quite sure that we can honestly say that that's not the case. And this is where Node comes into picture. The reason for us as a company to exist is that we are enabling these IT technologies to be used in the OT devices and OT networks. Very typical customer of ours is today very large, global, giant company, because they have understood this need already. But further we go, I strongly believe that every company in the industrial automation world needs to adapt to this megatrend. I will now show a couple of examples how this is done in reality and what it means in a real life. But before I do that, I have to show a picture, which is a very simplified architectural picture of how our software is working. And the reason for that is that it's easier to follow the example cases after you know the basic architecture. So the simplified view is that our solution is based on the 2 pieces of software. One is what we call a central app, That is a central tool which is designed to control all the local brains. So all in the local networks being these edge apps, that how do we configure it and what are they designed to do? And the edge app is then basically doing all the actions. So it's communicating with all the OT devices such as PLC, robot controllers and others. And it's sharing information two ways. So it's data points, files, operating systems, you name it, but has this two-way communication. And then on the layer above it, still in the OT network, can do multiple different kind of actions to be able to connect these technologies to these devices. And then, of course, when the edge apps may be one per site or even hundreds per site, depending how the network structure is done, this is creating a web which can connect any global IT infrastructure to any device in any network, and also can be locally sharing certain information or giving control for the local operators. This simplified view is maybe helping when we are moving on and considering this, let's say, the side of concern, that how do we secure the continuity as a base of everything we do when we are taking and adapting these new technologies, also the progressive ones, the cool ones, because before we do the actual groundwork, we are not able to fully utilize any of this at all. It all starts from controlling the networks. So we call it that we conduct OT networks with our technology. And what we mean by that is that very typically in the industrial world, we have multiple local networks in a factory. Some of our customers may have 100 local sub-networks there. And there are multiple devices in those networks from multiple vendors, different machine builders, also different automation vendors, and so on and so on. And there is basically no visibility to these networks as a starting point. And if we go back a little bit, looking the IT world and what they have done with the laptops and phones and everything, we basically would need to have the same. We would need to know what is in our networks. We would need to know different kind of details of these devices. We should be able to monitor online constantly what is happening with them. And we have to identify the different kind of risks, security and other such risks of all of these devices. So we technically do it so that our edge application in the local network is using multiple different technical methods to communicate with these devices, being able to look for IP and MAC addresses, versions of both hardware and operating system softwares, CPU load, memory and disk usage, and other such details, so that we can constantly monitor what is going on with these devices. Gives us then capability of, for example, see if somebody is connecting any kind of device to those networks, being, for example, a laptop, even a memory stick to a robot, or change of a single device. Let's say that they have changed the inverter to be another one because the one burned out. All these changes can be tracked out and the software versions and so on and so on. By connecting these local networks now to our central service, we can also create, of course, different kind of, either within our own tool or by integrating to other tools, different kind of views where we are following these networks. And we can integrate them to the different databases where we can look for that, oh, there may be a vulnerability in one of these known devices. So, hey, there's a software version, this and that of this and that PLC, and it's known to be a risk. Then we know that we have to update that particular piece of software. Very normal procedure in the IT world, meaning that your IT guy sends you a notification that your Zoom is out of date, please update, which I just needed to do before coming into this presentation, by the way. Now, the second part, the update part, in industrial world is very often related to files. So logical next step is to conduct files within the same networks. Why? In industrial automation, as probably most of the audience know, we are still handling very many things as files. So the machine or robot cells or others are having recipes or CAM files as files, but also different software solutions may be files, exe files. Also, the code is a file. Different PLC brands have their specific robot code or PLC code as a certain file type. And all these, again, have different formats, so they have to work in the same way. And the funny thing is that if we look in the factories traditionally, or even today, we are seeing stuff like USB sticks, random VPN connections, uncontrolled accesses, sending stuff with emails. And when I tell this to my friends in the IT industry, they are laughing at me and say, no, that's not possible. Yes, it is possible, and it's reality. 99% it's reality. So that's why we are working hard with our customers to make the technology where we can fully freely transfer these different files to be able to bring updates into life, but also to handle these recovery plans, backup plans, and so on, so that things like what I told as an example of my 45-minute blackout in my service can happen also in factory when it collapses. That we get it up and running in tens of minutes or similar. Now, let's go back to the technical solution again, because we are engineers and we love these engineering pictures. This is rough structure, how the process works. So typically there is some kind of a version control or similar system that is integrated to our solution through the central app. And then when the central app is communicating with these tens, hundreds, or thousands of different edge apps, we can basically distribute any software version to any device in any network. And the same path can go backwards. So if there is a backup or a change in locally done and it has to be getting back to the control system to be distributed to other places, for example, it's possible to do that as well. And if there is not centralized version control system, our central app can act as one, but it's not really designed for that, as version control systems exists. Now, technically, this means so that we take one of the typical version handling systems, such as GitLab or GitHub. We get a new piece of file that has to be distributed to the OT device. We send it first through the integration to our central application, further to all needed or intended edge applications, which are then further giving it to these devices. And after it has done it, it drops it from our side. So that means that we are just delivering it. Now, at this point, we are talking about file getting into the target device. So basically, it means that from this on, we need to be able to do all the actions by the user himself. But we can also configure this logistics to go any other direction, back and forth. So we can command the paths by having the files from different places than our own central application. This is very typical requirement would be to handle the backups. Because when we are down and we don't have even internet, we have to have local backups as well, and the recovery plans has to be built so that they are actually resilient. And like I said, this is moving the files to the right place. So this would then replace all those memory sticks and others which are security hazard and huge source of human errors overall. We can even add one more step, and that is by giving a separate Docker container designed to be working with individual vendors' devices. We can even do a physical update of a device. So not only deliver a new package, but also update a robot or update a PLC. And by giving an interface to control this fully, we are allowing our customers to build mechanisms that, for example, you have a touch panel, which is giving you an information that, hey, there is an update. Do you want to update your, or there's a new version of the software, do you want to update your robot cell? real case from real life. One of our very large customers, global giant, is planning to have, out of their hundreds and hundreds of robot cells that they're having in their factory, a system where such package comes in, it asks the operator to update, an operator can ignore a few times, but after 3 or 4 ignores, the robot cell simply says that I'm not moving anymore before you do an update. Now, does this sound familiar? Well, that is basically exactly how our laptops works and phones works and even our cars work in that way at the moment. So this is just bringing those technologies alive in the field of industrial automation, as simple as that. So going back to this, basically, it means that we are allowing people to monitor the network, know what's happening with the hardware-wise, software-wise, being able to react anything that happens there that is unexpected or otherwise surprising. And lastly, giving mechanisms to build automated processes that are similar than anything in the IT world we have done in the last 20 years. So I end my presentation with this quote that was in the free ad of this session, that adapting these solutions from IT industry will happen. And it's not going to be optional. It will be essential. And nobody in this field will be competitive after upcoming few years without understanding this and following this trend. Thank you.
So thank you so much for your presentation. Nice to have you here. So let's start with the Q&A, or rather first a little note to everybody listening. Fragen können natürlich auch weiterhin während der Fragerunde gestellt werden. So then let's jump right in with a more broader question. Why do you think automation tools are changing towards IT tools?
Well, at the end of the day, I don't even believe that they are changing too much towards them. I think that in a couple of years, there will be no separate tools for this. They will be the same tools. And the reason for this is that all these big companies are already having very many reasons to run version handling systems or Visual Studio, because they're doing also other softwares. And they are developing that with the IT tools that are much more flexible, open, and better known in the industry than the traditional IT automation tools. So that means that we will see a reality where the software version development and version handling and others will be done with the same tool, regardless if it's an IT development or OT development. And this is a trend that you can already see. For example, Siemens and all the other big PLC vendors are releasing software development environments that are compatible with Visual Studio. So they will not only be similar, they will be the same.
Right. Well, that fits actually pretty well in with another question we had a little later on, but I'd like to move it up. Isn't there a danger or risk, security risk, with saving all information into one space or having only one tool?
Well, that is actually an excellent question. When we are talking about this backup planning, that's one of the key reasons why the best practices of the industry is what they call 3-2-1. So you have to have 3 backups of all the softwares that you're running, and they have to be at least in 2 different locations, out of which one has to be right next to the device himself. So in the same network. So that means that this rule is designed for these kind of risks. Now, if we look at this from other point of view, I mean, the tooling infrastructure in the IT companies are typically in one place. So you have these GitLabs and GitHubs, but there are security copies in multiple different physical environments. This is typically how you build this.
Yeah, of course, naturally, just one backup. I think everybody knows that whoever wrote a bigger speech or thesis, you always have 5 versions available.
Exactly.
We've got another question regarding the accessibility, because everything runs through the app, you said, I think. If we're now we work on a need-to-know basis, so not every employee is allowed to see every information or is able to work with every information. Is there a way to restrict access so they can only look at part of it?
Yes. Uh, Quite obviously, any such system than ours is having very extensive user management. However, I would like to highlight the fact that we are rather technology to utilize when building these things. So the user interface is actually relatively rarely our software. User interface, for example, for the version handling would be the version handling system himself. So there would be in the background an admin user who have built these paths so that when somebody is working in GitLab or GitHub and he or she is pushing a new software version, the integration in the background is actually handling it to go to the right place. But only very small number of people in our large customers are actually logging into our system. But even those people, of course, there's an extensive user management to handle who sees what.
Very well. Now we've talked about the software part a lot, but let's move on to the hardware part. Somebody would like to know, sorry, is the technology dependent on dedicated automation suppliers?
Yes, um, but only when it comes to the fact that can I update the device or not. Everything else is standardized. So moving the files, reading the information. Also, the data collection is depending a little bit of the vendor, but we were not talking about that. But we have many technical ways to do this in a same and similar way. So it look and feel is the same, even though the technology in the background is different when it comes to these things. However, there is one thing that is quite significantly depending on the automation vendor, and that is that how much they allow an external system to run updates. So some of them don't do it at all, don't allow it at all. Most of them allow it to the level of, let's say, PLC or robot code. But then if you want to go deeper to the system settings, operating system versions, you start to see big differences on how to do it. But generally speaking, big global giants in the automation world, I mean, have understood because they have big customers who have big needs and who have big power to ask. That means that we see this also very much that when we have one of the global giants as a customer, they ask these accesses and they typically are granted to have them. But yes, there are certain differences. That is actually a good question.
It's nice. Now, you started with talking about the new regulations that are coming. So, is the solution usable for NIS2 business continuity?
Yes, this is one of the key, let's say, use cases that our customers are using us, basically handling this in NIS2 section 21, where you have these business continuity needs. So how to handle the backups, how to handle the version handling and these kind of things. So it is one of those things that are used for that. I think that the world is full of different kind of solutions how to handle the IT part of it because they already existed. Those tools existed before the NIS2 came. But NIS2 has a problem in the OT network that many of the requirements are technically next to impossible or extremely expensive to make in the in the OT network, and that is exactly where we are very lightweighted, simple software that is making this possible and accessible to all the companies in the industry.
Right. So we have one more question actually, and it's a broader question again, which I kind of like. Somebody asked, why should we look towards the IT world instead of the IoT world?
Well, I think that in a sense, IoT world is, I'm probably part of the IoT world, even though I don't like to call myself to be part of it. So I'm answering on the behalf of IoT world in the sense that we are taking those best practices from IT, and then maybe answer why do we look there. I think that the biggest reason is that we are seeing a massive trend where people from or with the IT background are coming more and more to the industry and work there and start to ask things that are traditionally not asked or not demanded or not possible. And that is why it's quite obvious that we start to look where the background of these questions are or where it's coming from and why they're asking these kind of things. And typically it is because there are systems that are designed by multiple people. You have developers around the globe, different continents, different countries, multiple sub-teams. So that means that this flexibility need that they have had in their previous life, they want to bring here. And we have to follow that trend, so to say.
Right then, thank you very much, Ossi, for answering all those questions, for your good answers, and for being here at all, for taking the time. So, I wish you a very nice day und auch unsere Zuschauer natürlich einen wunderschönen Tag und viel Spaß im weiteren Verlauf unserer Expo.